make sure that the topics are on demand and meeting your needs. So today, as we prepare for our webinar, we can get to the next slide. We are going to have you chat with Vicki, and she's going to go over some of the technical requirements for support in the webinar. Vicki.
Thank you very much, Charisse. And again, welcome everybody. Again, my name is Vicki Swindell. We're just going to go through a few housekeeping items in Zoom for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the platform. So at the bottom, let me start out with, if you do have any technical questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to send a private chat. We're going to go over the chat button in just a moment. And you are welcome to contact me as well via email or phone. We'll go over that in just a moment as well. So at the bottom of your screen, you will see a mute, unmute button. We do ask that everybody remain muted throughout the webinar, as chatting will be our main mode of communication. There will be a participant button there that has a couple of different functions, as well as a chat box. And there is a leave meeting button in the far right. We hope you don't need to use it, but just know that's there if needs be. Okay, so on the participant list, if you hover at the bottom of your screen and click on that, it allows you to use nonverbal communications. So for example, you can raise your hand, lower your hand, ask your facilitator to go faster or slower. There's a more button there. So if you need to step out, there's a little coffee cup, for example. Please know they do act as toggles. So for example, if you raise your hand, and you're addressed, please click it again to lower it. That way we know, as I say, you've been addressed. As well, we have several people in the webinar today. If you hover over your name and you see your name in there, it's either abbreviated or perhaps you've phoned in. If you could please hover over your name and click on rename and make sure you have your full first and last name typed in. That way we can take accurate attendance. Okay, and again, we will be using chat as our main mode of communication. If you don't already have the chat box open, there is a chat message waiting for you in there. It will be flashing orange. Just click on that chat box. It will open up that way. You'll be able to read the thread as chat messages come in. And to send a chat, just type your message in the type message here box and click send, and it will go ahead and send. It will default to sending it to everyone. If you do need to send a private message, you can do so as well. Just click on the drop down next to everyone and click on the name of the person you'd like to send a private chat to. Okay, and let's see here. If you are attending the webinar with another colleague from your site, please be sure to enter his or her full first and last name in the chat box as well, again, so we can take accurate attendance. And just a reminder that this webinar will be recorded. The recording link will be posted in the CALPRO, on the CALPRO website within about a week. And with that, actually just a reminder, if you do need to contact me, please feel free to email at vswindell@air.org or enter a message in the chat box. And with that, I will turn it back over to Charisse.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Vicki. And again, thank you all for joining us. We do value your time, and so if you would like a certificate of attendance upon the conclusion of the webinar, please email us at calpro@air.org, and we will be happy to issue you a certificate of attendance for the 1-hour webinar today. And let me get to introduce our great facilitators. So, speaking with us today on growing programs with limited funding and facilities, we have two names that I'm sure are familiar to both of you, but I will just go ahead and briefly introduce them. We have Chris Nelson, who is the Director of Adult and Career Education with Oakland Unified School District, and there he oversees all the services to adults in the greater Oakland community. He's been an adult educator his entire life as a teacher, teacher coordinator, administrator, and worked in a variety of schools from Albany, Martinez, and now with Oakland Adult Ed. From 2015 to 2017, he was on loan from Oakland USD and served as a state director of adult education for the California Department of Education, where he oversees all of the WIOA grants as well as the adult education block grant. Also on the call facilitating the webinar today is John Werner, who's the executive director of Sequoia's Adult Education Consortium. John has many hats that he wears. He's also the president-elect of CAIA and the CCAE Central Section President. John's administrative experience includes assistant principal of curriculum and instruction and also serving as a principal. And in 2015, he was awarded the AXA Administrator of the Year in the Adult Education category award. He began his career in education in 2000, where he started off as a high school English teacher. And currently, John is serving on the CALPRO Professional Advisory Board. Between the two of them, I'm sure you will be really delighted with the information that they are going to be sharing with us about how to grow your program with limited funding and facilities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris to get us started on the webinar. There will be an opportunity following the presentation for questions, but as Vicki shared, if things come up during the presentation, please type them in the chat and we will try and get them answered. Chris, please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Charisse. Really great to be here with all of you. I'm very excited to do this presentation. We're going to start off with our agenda, just go over that. So here is our agenda for today. We are going to do a little bit on the big picture on growing your program. The next part will be around leveraging partners to grow your program. The third section will be on utilizing new funding and existing funding to grow your program. And then the final part will be a little bit on growing programs with limited facilities and limited funding for that. But before we do that, before we start with that, let's do a chat here. So here's our question that we'd like for you to answer in the chat room. What challenges do you face with growing your programs? And I'm going to give you maybe 30 seconds to think about it. You can start filling it in, but I'm going to give you some silent time here to think about what challenges are you facing right now with growing your programs. And we've got things coming up already here: low enrollment, qualified staff and funding, limited space, limited resources, difficulty in finding qualified teachers, funding, lack of funding to start anything new, competition, only part-time staff. Lots. Great. Getting lots of ideas here, lots of things for us to be thinking about as we go forward. Struggling with funding for expansion and finding staff that stays long-term, persistence rate for students, not enough funds to pay for the teacher, limited space, and no funding from school district, limited available funding for expansion. Okay. So those are all very good. Hopefully we'll cover out some of these things today, and we'll be able to address some of those concerns. But looking at the big picture as you think about growing your program, here are two things to really think about. One is addressing particular needs in your community, and also the second one is around having a vision for growing your program. In terms of addressing your needs of your community, as most of you are aware, many of our adult ed programs suffered major cuts 10 years ago. Subsequently, the needs of our communities ceased to be addressed. We had that situation here in Oakland. We suffered major cuts going from a program of 25,000 to 2,000 students. But the data in Oakland continues to show that there's 107,000 people in our area that speak English less than well, and 67,000 who do not have a high school diploma or GED. So in addition to the program cuts, many community-based organizations, CBOs, they came to us requesting classes in GED, high school diploma, ESL, and more, but we could not provide assistance like we could with our former funding model. The good news was that many of our CBOs represented specific groups of adult learners like veterans, reentry, people who lived in housing authority, refugee programs. We got more information about our community and the adults in need of our services this way. This gave us some baseline data about who our students are and what they needed, and it allowed us to reach out to those who were really on the margins. So with this information, this really helped us to reimagine ourselves and think how we could be, how we should be, and what we should offer to our communities. So as you see from the map here, we began offering classes throughout our city. This is where we are currently. The north and southeastern part of this map is mainly the hills and not areas of need. Most of our need is in the west, central, and east. We have 32 programs at 20 facility sites. 12 of these are in OUSD facilities and 8 are in non-OUSD facilities, CBOs, churches, and business. As we began adding courses, sites, and programs throughout the city, we thought, in addition to all this, that we needed to have a mission and a vision. So we developed a mission and a vision for our program. We had to reimagine ourselves and develop a vision of what we wanted to be. Right now, our mission and vision is providing adult education courses, including pre-GED, high school diploma, ESL, and CTE throughout the city of Oakland. As we are currently going through our WASC accreditation process, we are envisioning and expanding our program so that we will have major locations of service throughout our city, including west and east. Those locations would be where our offices have an office presence and a campus, those types of things, in addition to classes throughout the city and school district sites and community-based organizations and churches. So ultimately, we may have more major locations, but that process to determine growth should be strategic and inclusive. So it's important to have a vision that is shared internally amongst staff, board, district, administration, students, and then also externally with your community partners and community stakeholders. It's important for that shared vision, so that you have a buy-in from all and an agreed upon direction that you share where you want your program to be going forward. Besides having a mission and vision, you need to have a plan. There are a variety of plans that you can have, and in many cases, you might have more than one plan. Many adult schools have a strategic plan. This is usually a plan that is 3 to 5 years in length. The process is developed internally with staff, administration, district, and also with community stakeholders and students. This might be a specific strategic plan, or it might be part of a WASC plan or a CAPE consortium plan. Once you have a mission and a vision and a plan, and you know what you wish to accomplish, then you are in much better position to find new resources, utilize better your current resources, and then become laser focused on what you wish to accomplish. Another important aspect for growing strategically is who is helping in making decisions. What stakeholders are helping in this process? I mentioned earlier staff, district, community, students, community supporters. Are any of them in a position to provide guidance, resources, and or potential funding? It's important to have those stakeholders who can help with those areas close to you. Perhaps your stakeholders are a funder or a sponsor. Maybe they can lead you to more resources or provide direct resources, especially now that you have a mission and vision and a plan that they have all bought into. So the next slides are about who are your partners and what assets do you and they bring to the table. So my colleague John is now going to take it from here. John?
Thank you, Chris. So yeah, once you know what your vision, your mission is, and you can see your place in your community to meet the community needs, one of the first steps that you'll want to do is find out who in your neighborhood is there to help accomplish those goals. What regional partners do you have that you can access that will help share in your mission and your vision, and vice versa, you share in their mission and vision as well. So the first thing that you need to do is take inventory of who's in the neighborhood, and I want to provide you with a couple ideas, a couple slides here that will help you think in ways of what type of partners can you bring in, and then think about certain tactics. There are ways to grow programs that you may not be thinking of if you're kind of stuck on, well, we need more money to build more classrooms and hire more teachers. There may be some things you can do that will actually help you increase student service provision in your communities. And then the last piece I want to touch on is some barriers. So partnership can look like a lot of different things. There are many different types of partners that you may have or may already be aware of in your region. And what I want to encourage everyone to do is to develop that relationship with your partner groups. They need to understand your mission vision and how you're going to strategically address the needs for your adult learners in your community, but you've also got to understand their mission and vision so that you can help enhance their program at all. The saying goes, a rising tide raises all boats, and that's very true in high quality partnership systems. So learn about your partners, learn what their priorities are, learn about their revenue streams, the rules that they have to follow, and that then you can help them engage you in your goals as well. And the thing to keep at the center of all of this is it's always about the student and serving the student and reaching their goals, not necessarily about lifting an individual partner or agency into notoriety. That's not what we do our work for. It's about serving our communities. So when I say think tactically about this, there are areas of work, tactics you can engage to help increase your program's footprint. Short of hiring new staff, opening new classrooms and new sections of classes, some things you do with partners and within your consortium with your members maybe that you have through CAPE or community-based organizations, there are some things that you can do that can help everybody maintain good enrollment and good footprint. Example on this screen, curriculum alignment. When students have seamless transitions between curriculum and curriculum providers, they're more likely to maintain enrollment. An example of this would be a seamless transition between an adult basic education program and maybe a college program that those students would feed into, or an ESL program between regional providers. When we align, we can hold students in a consistent pattern, and it takes a little bit of negotiation and flex from the provider agencies, but the benefits to the student. We may talk with our partners in the region about, thinking tactically about how we use facilities and share facilities or share buildings. A lot of times a building cost is a fixed cost for someone. And if the facility is not being utilized by someone for a block of time, it could be open to someone else to come in and share it. We do this quite often. In my region, we'll share elementary school campuses or even workforce development board type facilities so that we maybe don't have to suffer an overhead cost or a rent cost in facility use. The other thing that we do, and the last one of these that I want to highlight down at the bottom, is joint advisory in my region. Again, this is about creating pathways that are stable, they're seamless, and the student isn't affected by some of the disruption that can occur to an overall pathway because everybody's vying for single point joint advisory or single advisory panels with maybe employers or other stakeholders that may be in the region, that we start to share advisory to enhance our curriculum. And if we do have a component of work-based learning in a program, we can benefit from that. The goal of thinking of all of these areas is to stabilize program, make things seamless, and that helps us share students back and forth and keep students connected. Okay, barriers. So, this type of stuff can scare people right up front. One of the barriers that we run into is the fears, misconceptions about other agencies, and this agency may come in and they're going to take over what we do in this community, and that's our job, or vice versa. We're afraid to get into an area of work because that's really so-and-so's, that's their backyard, and we don't want to get into it and disrupt them. And what I want to encourage everyone to do is to address those types of barriers right up front and from the get-go with your partners, and approach it with an understanding that it's about growth mindset. And if we don't kind of air out fears and misconceptions early on, it's going to continue to lead to bunker mentality that restricts everybody from having really high quality partnerships. So my recommendation is always address them right up front, but do it from a growth mindset perspective, to build that communication channel. I want to share with you then, so thinking about all of these ideas here, partners, thinking strategically, thinking about barriers, a specific example that we did out in my neck of the woods in the Central Valley here. What you're looking at is a Google Earth shot of Visalia, California, and then that red X is right smack in the middle of a little community called Farmersville. It's a really small town. They actually don't have an adult ed provider out in Farmersville at all. Well, they didn't. They do now, but they didn't a couple years ago. The community has a high need for ESL program and programs, other types of courses like citizenship prep or GED that could serve the same population. The school district didn't have the ability to launch their own adult literacy program. So we rallied some of our friends in the neighborhood to come to their rescue and help them out. And that's what all those arrows over on the left side represent. The red arrow is an adult school. The purple arrow is a CBO. The yellow arrow is my office out of the consortium. And then the green arrow is a community college. And what we all did is we banded together. The school district provided us with a row of classrooms. Imagine 5 classrooms in a wing, if you will. And then each one of those other Arrow agency providers was located in a classroom providing ESL coursework. We shared students seamlessly. We referred them through different levels. The community college only provides beginning ESL at their offsite locations. So they handled beginning ESL. The adult school handled intermediate and advanced ESL, and we brought the CBO in to handle Spanish GED for us. Now, the adult school does Spanish GED, but for the sake of this project, they gave up wanting to offer that so that the CBO could come in and do it, and then they could focus their resources on intermediate and advanced ESL. The local district took care of childcare, and then I leveraged my regional adult ed consortium navigators to provide guidance and supports and referrals to the students engaged and help move them between the programs there and other resources available in the community. Because of partnership, because we thought tactically and we addressed a lot of barriers up front, like whose backyard was it, we got a successful program on the ground that benefited the community of Farmersville with good enrollments. I'm most proud of now there's lots to be proud of in this example, but I'm very proud of the fact that the residents of Farmersville did not see this as a College of the Sequoias deal or Sequoias Adult Ed Consortium or Proteus or Visalia Adult School. They thought it was their own school district doing all of it. And we were just perfectly happy with that. It gave an opportunity for the school district to shine and let their board be a school board in their community providing services. So our next section, we want to talk to you a little bit about, that's some good example there of leveraging what you have. But now we want to talk about, well, what do you do with maybe some new funds or existing funds to help grow your program? And in this section of the slides, we are going to call existing funding revenues you have already, and then new funding is just things that may be available that you don't have. This seems like a pretty simple thing to want to define for everybody, but we thought it would be beneficial if you thought in terms of existing funds or dollars you have. And each one of you on the webinar today may have access to different dollars, so it's a little difficult for us on our end to list them out, but just think of it in those terms. Things that you already have. New funding would be things you don't have yet that you potentially could go out and get. So some new funding sources that you may be aware of these, you may not be. We wanted to put together a laundry list for you to trigger ideas. We can't, in the scope of this 1-hour webinar, go into details on every one of these. Frankly, some of these could require a whole year of 1-hour webinars just to teach everybody how to access and leverage them and use them and follow all the requirements of each one of them. But what we wanted to give you was a brief laundry list of here's what's available out there in the world of adult ed literacy that could provide you some benefit. So we want to ask you guys a little bit, make this a little more interactive. We want to go to a poll that we've created to find out from those of you on this Zoom who has what from the previous slide. So we've created a Zoom poll. In this, it's going to look like there's 2 questions. That's a technical aspect of Zoom polling. It's really the same question. It's just we had to use 2 questions to get enough answers. There's so many funding sources out there. So what we'd like you to do is go through that poll. You should see it on your screen now and click those funding resources that you know you have access or you're using currently. The question is, beyond WIOA Title II, what other fund sources do you leverage?
And just so everyone is aware, if you don't see all the options under the number 2 question, which is really just a continuation, just scroll down, if you would.
Thank you, Vicki. I forgot that part. Yes, you got to scroll a little bit. On the right-hand side of the poll, there's a scroll bar for you. And we're going to give everybody a few minutes to participate in the poll, and then we'll have Vicki click over and show us all the results. And I think everyone can see, I think everyone can see results as they vote. Vicki, is that correct or no? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. I can see them. I won't let the cat out of the bag yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting outcomes though, interesting results of this poll. Looks like responses are starting to slow down a little bit.
It's interesting to see the least and the most. So that'll be good to highlight them.
It is, yeah. All right, Vicki, it looks like we've got 17 out of 23 participants, and using the old popcorn count to 3 is it done? I think we're about there if we can see the results.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, so we've got the poll results. Everyone should be able to see them now. 16 out of 17 people are accessing CalWorks. And then, boy, we've got a big drop. So they're orange if they're really high yeses. And then non-credit drops way down, 1 out of 17 people. Perkins, a few more people using that. Of course, this is a WIOA Title II webinar, so it may be that we've got a few schools that are doing career technical education, leveraging that. But if you're looking to grow into CTE, Perkins is an option out there. Local control funding, about 12%. Fees, that one surprises me a little bit for who's on the call. We've got quite a bit in fees coming in. Oh, I take that back. No, because we could have CTE programs in adult ed. Jail ed funds, yep. If I could do the poll with you guys, I'd have to mark jail ed funds. We do have a jail program locally in Visalia. Obviously, WIOA, yep, good. Contract services, in-kind contributions, strong workforce. No surprise in that. 0 responses. Community college supportive services. And then CAPE, a lot of people receive California Adult Ed program dollars here. Interesting results here. So here's the thing to take away from this. There's a lot of available resources out there that could help you grow your programs that would be, new funds to you. And resources to help you access those as well. And sometimes it's just nice to know, well, what is out there that we could go after?
And John, I'm going to ask if you can maybe quickly highlight some of the ones that folks might not be familiar with, like LCFF. And
Yeah.
the acronym, and I see what I believe is supposed to be the ETPL, that one too. They might not be
Okay.
familiar.
Sure. So LCFF is going to be dollars that come into a K-12 local education agency, your school district, local school district. And not all school districts spend a portion of their K-12 budget on their adult ed program. As a matter of fact, what we see is many school districts leave their adult ed program to survive off of things like WIOA, the California Adult Ed program, maybe Perkins or CalWorks or some of those other revenue sources. So to see a couple folks out there getting support from their district is really encouraging to me as a CAIA state president. I like to see that. I think local school boards should be aware of their adult ed program and actively supporting it. If I scroll down to, you mentioned the educational ETPL, it's right under foundation funding. That's education training program dollars. And there's a couple ways that we access that. One is our classes may be approved courses on an ETPL list through our local workforce development board. That allows them to fund students who come take our classes. There's also ETP grants where you can get program grants. An example of that is I have one in Tulare, at Tulare Adult School through the ETP panel, and it's good for $298,000 to Tulare Adult School to run a licensed vocational nursing program. And then, other federal grants. I'll give you a tip on this one. If everybody get your pencil ready, write down grants.gov. Grants, grants.gov. That is a federal website where you can find grants for everything under the sun done by the federal government, anything they're invested in. Community college supportive services. So this is one that we don't leverage in my region, but it would be dollars coming from your community college to support students. And not a lot of people click, nobody clicks strong workforce program. So these are dollars. Very specifically, it would be difficult for an adult literacy program to receive dollars directly from strong workforce, but someone may benefit maybe in an in-kind type of work from strong workforce activities going on in the state of California. Those are really about building high quality pathways in the K-12 to community college world.
I find it interesting that strong workforce still is at 0 out of 17 that are even looking at it. We're just starting that here in Oakland and with our community college Peralta, trying to connect it more. It's in the language that adult education can be a part of strong workforce. It's just not the emphasis. So it seems like if you want to be part of that conversation, you really have to put your program out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to move on to our next set of slides because we want to get to some answers on some of this, and before we move, too far off of potential grant or new dollar funding, Chris and I both have been involved with a strategy that's creative in developing new funds for adult ed literacy type programs or even career technical programs. Chris, so we use something called a instructional service agreement. I want to turn it over to Chris and have him talk to you about what these are and what Oakland's done with that, and then I can explain the Visalia model to you all.
Yeah, these can be a lot of different things. I'm going to explain to you what our particular model is in Oakland, or what we're trying to accomplish here in Oakland. In Oakland's model, our community college district and adult ed, we're just in the process of making available jointly the non-credit courses developed and provided in coordination so that our current students will have an opportunity to become dually enrolled in certain non-credit courses like ESL, basic skills, integrated education and training, along with also being provided counseling and support services, including placement, orientation, academic counseling, student educational plans, and career and life planning services. Because we've been in existence, our adult ed has been in existence for over 148 years, and we have a long history of working with OUSD schools, our community partners, those type of partners and stakeholders. Our community college is partnering with us so that the classes that we offer in ESL by OA's teachers and supported by community college staff will help to generate FTES. FTES is full-time equivalent students. In the old K-12 language, that was ADA. That the college is going to be reimbursed at the state level for their FTES. In our situation, we've agreed to be reimbursed for the cost of our instructors and the supports they need, such as professional development and prep and planning. With this model, we'll be able to start up new classes where we know we have enough students to generate those FTES, and that will be funded for the adult ed's costs. We win because our adult ed's major costs are covered. So the major costs of our coverage is the instruction. The community colleges win because their administrative costs are covered and they are better positioned to reach their cap in their FTES allotment. And then finally, the community and students are the big winners, as we can really add more classes in our city to address the numbers lacking skills that I mentioned earlier. So that to me is really the most important aspect of putting together an instructional service agreement. So with that, John, do you want to go over your model?
Sure, briefly. So our model would be to take a career technical course at an adult school, convert it essentially into a non-credit CTE class of the colleges. Now, everything at the adult school stays the same. The instructor, the location, everything. For all intents and purposes, it looks like an adult school CTE program, but we fund it through an apportionment model through the community college. This allows then, based on enrollments and attendance, the community college to pass through dollars to the adult school. So how does this help adult ed literacy? Well, then the adult school is able to shift funds, CAPE funds or WIOA funds, well, CAPE funds in the welding situation that they would have used to provide that, and then steer those dollars over to an ABE program that supports those students taking the welding program. Again, it's a little creative. It takes negotiation between you and the college to figure it out. You've got a key thing. I starred the curriculum. Your curriculum has to pass the community college test. So we were in a easy position on this, as ours was already aligned with their welding program. So that was an easy sell for them. So these, a couple models here, but an instructional service agreement can be a creative way to generate funds into your program that then you can use your funds that would have gone to that program to support it or do something new.
And John and Chris, a question came in from Angela. Can someone send the language in strong workforce that indicates adult ed can be included? Our K-12 CD director indicated that she was not able to use strong workforce dollars for adult education activities. It would be great to get some guidance on how adult ed access to strong workforce might look.
Yes, we can get that information out later. I know that the focus is on K-12 and creating pathways from K-12 to the community college, but it's still there's a way for adult ed to participate. One way is for example, if you've got a pathway, a K-12 pathway in, let's say, a welding program during the day, there's no reason why adult ed can't help out or participate with that, like in an evening program, for example. But anyway, that's just an example. I can send out information that I have around adult education and strong workforce.
Okay, so let's say you're not in a position to go out and find new funding, or to even set up something as creative as an instructional service agreement. You've got what you've got existing funding, existing program. We want to talk about a couple strategies for you that can help you still grow program with no new dollars. Chris?
Yes, so on to the next slide. Uh, so unused dollars are funds that are carried over year after year. They are on your books, but you technically don't spend them as they become one-time funds. We noticed that in our adult ed consortium, we had a continual carryover from year to year, mainly due to late startup. Those funds then became one-time use going forward because the next full year we receive another full allocation and use of all the next year's funding, leaving that balance again on a year-to-year basis. So over the course of a few years, that carryover got larger and larger due to a variety of reasons, which I won't go into here. Therefore, our consortium work group made a decision to try to address the excessive carryover and develop a plan to expend it in a more timely fashion. Last spring, we looked at current year spending and determined how much was going to be left on the table for the following year. We only decided to work with the funds that were carryover from the consortium office, which was about $600,000. We had a decision-making process set up in place for governance of our consortium, which helped to establish our fair decision-making process for dividing up carryover funds. And we were able to allocate an additional $600K to our programs. So as you think about carryover, one-time funding might include curriculum development, equipment, facilities, wait list relief, pilots, startups, things like that. In our case, we had too little time to strategically think about how to spend our extra $600K this last time around. But now that we've developed those processes and procedures and we have a 3-year plan, it should be much easier for us going forward to determine how funds get spent. So again, having a mission, a vision, a strategic plan, whether it's a WASC or consortium plan, puts you in a much better position to advocate for dollars. John?
Oh, sorry guys, I forgot to unmute myself. Thank you, Chris. We were in a position where we wanted to add more students to our night ESL program at one of the local adult schools, and we just didn't have the money to do it. We were having a hard time finding new teachers. We were out of room to even grow as far as like classroom space goes. So we restructured, we turned to our master schedule and thought about, well, how could we restructure the program to get more students in? Essentially what we did, we took a class, an ESL class that ran 3 nights a week for 3 hours per night, and it had about 25 students in it. And we cut that class in half and made 2 cohorts out of it, or two separate class instances out of it. Each class had 25 students enrolled in it. We shortened the time, the duration each night from 3 hours to an hour and a half for each class. That allowed us to serve 50 students total in the new model. Same teacher, same classroom, same desks, books, and everything. No new dollars spent on it. We just doubled the enrollment by cutting the class in half. Our initial thought was that learning gains would slow down, that we would have outcome problems, but we kind of let that offset in our minds by thinking, well, we're going to have a lot more students enrolled and we'll do a greater good. What we actually found out was students performed better with shorter classes. It seemed that we were actually overdoing it on 3 hours a night, and we were wearing our students out. They work all day, they come for 3 hours, and by the end of that 3-hour class in the original model, they were just worn out. They were tired and ready to go home. So when we shortened it to a 1.5-hour burst, we kept it 3 nights a week, but a 1.5-hour burst, those students wound up performing better on our CASAS testing. So we were pleasantly surprised, and enrollment stayed tighter because students were more comfortable and could better access a shorter class. It got them home with their families more in the evening. So no new money, no new inputs, no new resources, just thinking about the master schedule differently. And sometimes facilities are really a problem, and Chris has some ideas to help you out with facility limitations.
So in terms of utilizing one-time funding for facility upgrades and moves, et cetera, as I mentioned before, and maybe, I don't know if this is the case for many of you or not, but we had carryover, both at the consortium level, but we also had it within our program. A lot of times at the beginning when you're building up a program, you end up having carryover on a year-to-year basis because you're still growing back your program once you've gotten new money. We were a very small program growing to a kind of a more of a moderate-sized program. So the carryover kept coming because we couldn't spend that allocation on a year-to-year basis. So this is a great way to use one-time funds is for facility upgrades, like for building, upgrading your facility, an actual move, acquiring a facility. In our case, we have a lot of funding set aside for that. And in the future, we're hoping to add on a district school site, and that's due to reduction in K-12 attendance in our district. So we're hoping that we can fit in there. And then also that kind of helps our, in our case, we had the issue around charter encroachment. And so if we're able to move into a facility without having a new charter coming in, that would be, I think, would be better for our community. In terms of utilizing partner facilities, we set that up at no or little cost. In Oakland, we set out to reach out to the community-based organizations, as I mentioned earlier, and our local schools. And because we had no campus after the cuts of 2009, we had to reach out to those schools and CBOs. We met with the stakeholders, and many of us wanted to provide classes at our CBOs and the churches free of charge. So that's something to keep in mind, that a lot of these agencies will take you on free of charge. So, and as I mentioned earlier, we're 20 sites, 13 OUSD schools, 4 CBOs, 2 community colleges, and 1 church. The church, we actually pay rent at that church because it's also a nonprofit, but it's a very limited rent and very manageable. Because in negotiating rent, you really have to do this because especially in our area and probably some other areas of California where the rents are just astronomical in general, in the Bay Area and I think in other parts of California. Fortunately, the church that I mentioned is a key collaborator with our program, and they give it to us at an incredibly low yearly rate. And again, it's really important to have the right stakeholders at your table because they may bring resources that you might not have imagined. And then another way to grow your program with facilities is to leverage your facilities for other uses. Perhaps your community needs space and are willing to pay for the costs of rent. It's a way to bring in income utilizing your facilities. So that's what I have there on facilities. We definitely have time for questions. So we'd love to get some of your questions at this point. So we'll give you a few seconds to think.
All right, so we want to thank you, Chris and John, for the information on how to grow your programs with limited funding and facilities. I think you have shared some really good examples from what our rural program has done with John and from what a more urban program has done with Chris's examples. As you're thinking about all this information, if you do have questions, we'll give you a moment to share your thoughts and questions here. And then I believe John has some final comments that he wants to share as sort of a wrap up and debrief. And again, thank you, Chris and John, for the webinar today. So John, I'll turn over to you and give you a few minutes, and then we'll have some closing information for the participants.
Well, thank you, Cherie. So in preparing for this, Chris and I wrestled with the idea of adding some slides that talked about performance outcomes and measures of effectiveness that we need to all be thinking about. And we didn't spend a lot of time on it. Obviously, the slides didn't make it into the final cut, just to help us out with time management in an hour, But what I want to encourage everyone to do is to think about those performance outcomes that we worry about, whether it's WIOA or if you're involved with another funding stream. And as you think of these strategies, make sure that you can connect the dots from those sort of program level performance outcomes back to the student journey, what they experience going through your agency to get help and support, to make sure that you're aligning those two things nicely. The student's outcome, their goal achievement, should align to your own agency's performance metrics that you're worried about. And unless there's any other questions, Chris, I thank you for presenting with me. I sure did appreciate this. And
thank you, John. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Charisse and Vicki, for assisting us with this presentation. Really greatly appreciate that.
Great. Thanks again, everyone, for your participation in the Administrators Forum webinar today. We are always looking for your input and feedback on ideas for future webinars for administrators. The next one will occur in February or March of the coming year, 2020, already here. So please send us your feedback. You're going to be getting an evaluation as we close out, and your thoughts on future ideas will help us to plan the next webinars. Thanks very much, and have a great rest of your day.